Welcome to a deep dive. Today we're exploring something really fascinating. The education of a Kshatriya prince back in ancient India.
Right. And when you first think about it, maybe images of just battles and warriors spring to mind.
Exactly, swords and chariots. But, well, the source material we've looked at paints a much, much richer picture.
It really does. Our mission today, sort of, is to unpack just how comprehensive this training was. It wasn't only about creating skilled fighters.
Right.
It was about forging, well, complete leaders, people equipped for the huge responsibility of, running a kingdom, upholding society.
Sure.
And honestly, the sheer breadth of what they had to master, it might actually surprise you.
It seems like it was so much more than just physical strength. It sounds like it was about building wisdom, a sense of justice, compassion, right alongside the martial skills.
Precisely. Should we start with the bit people probably recognize most, the warrior foundation?
Yeah, let's do that. The discipline, the strategy.
Okay, so this was obviously fundamental. The sources talk about intense training. Archery, of course. Mace fighting. Swords. Wrestling.
Horse riding too, right? And even elephants.
Yes, exactly. Horse riding, elephant riding. But look, these weren't just about, how to hit something or ride straight.
Right.
They were designed to instill deep discipline. Strategic thinking, especially under pressure, making those split-second calls.
And you mentioned something crucial earlier. Yeah. The ethical side of it all. It wasn't just how to fight.
No, absolutely not. A huge part of it was understanding the ethics of war. What constitutes a just war? When should you actually hold back? And really critically, how do you protect the innocent, the vulnerable, even in the midst of conflict?
That really makes me think of Arjuna, in the Mahabharata. Everyone knows his skill with the bow. It's legendary.
Sure.
But the epic puts so much weight on his moral crisis. That huge dilemma he has on the battlefield about his Dharma. That struggle feels just as defining as his archery skill.
It absolutely is. It perfectly illustrates that mastering yourself, your duty, your emotions, was just as important, maybe more important than mastering a weapon.
Yeah.
And you brought up the animal riding horses, elephants.
Yeah.
Beyond just the practical skill of staying on,
Right.
managing these powerful animals, connecting with them, that fostered a real sense of responsibility, a connection to other living things, which, is pretty vital if you're supposed to care for an entire kingdom of people.
That's a great point, how even the practical stuff had these deeper layers. Okay, so moving on from the physical. The sources talk about a massive intellectual undertaking, too.
Right.
What exactly did a prince have to study?
The list is pretty staggering. You've got the Vedas, the core spiritual texts, then various Shastras, which cover things like law, ethics, governance,
Right.
the Puranas, all those historical mythological narratives, deep philosophy, detailed statecraft, economics, even astronomy and medicine.
Wow. Okay, that's some curriculum. And I take it this wasn't just about memorizing facts, like for a test.
Not at all, no. The real emphasis seems to have been on deep understanding, application. How do you take principles from, say, the Vedas about cosmic order and actually apply that to how society should function?
Right. How does it work in practice?
Exactly. How does economic theory help you manage the kingdom's resources for everyone's benefit? How does understanding human nature, which you get from philosophy, help you settle disputes fairly or forge strong alliances?
It sounds like they were meant to become, I don't know, like living libraries, walking encyclopedias of governance and wisdom.
That's not a bad way to put it, actually. I mean, think about texts like Kautilya's Arthashastra.
Oh, yeah, that's incredibly detailed.
Right. It's this dense, complex manual on statecraft covering everything from administration and law right through to, like, espionage and foreign policy.
Yeah.
The expectation was that a prince would internalize that level of knowledge. And on all this intellectual work, it wasn't just about knowing things. It was specifically about honing critical thinking, being able to take in huge amounts of information, synthesize it, and then make wise, discerning judgments.
Okay, so we've got the warrior, the scholar, but then there's this other dimension, which maybe it feels particularly relevant today, the focus on the ruler's heart, on compassion and justice.
Yes. And this might be the part people least associate with, ancient warrior kings, but the sources insist it was absolutely central. This is where Dharma comes in.
Righteous conduct.
Exactly. But not just as a rule book, it was meant to be the living soul of their education, the guiding principle for everything.
So what did that mean, practically, for a ruler on the throne?
Well, it meant truly understanding the needs of all your subjects. High status, low status, everyone. It meant ensuring justice was swift and fair.
Okay.
protecting those who were vulnerable, actively fostering harmony in the kingdom, and leading with integrity. Power wasn't seen as a personal gain.
More like a duty.
A profound duty, yes. Almost a sacred trust. You were there to serve the people.
You really see that ideal reflected in figures like Lord Rama, don't you? He's often shown sacrificing his own comfort, his own happiness, enduring exile, all for the sake of upholding righteousness, Dharma, and making sure his people felt secure and trusted his rule.
Exactly. That level of selflessness, that was held up as the ideal. And, a key way they taught these values was through stories. The epics, fables. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were treated as like living classrooms. They showed the consequences of bad actions, the rewards of integrity, the power of compassion, all in narratives people could connect with. It was about deeply internalizing Rajadharma.
Rajadharma, the specific dharma of a king.
The specific duties, the ethical code for a ruler. Yes.
Okay, now for something maybe even less expected, when you think of a warrior prince training in arts and culture, what was that about?
Yeah, this is fascinating. The sources mention training in things like music, poetry, dance, sometimes painting, other fine arts.
Seems like a luxury. Almost.
You might think so initially, but it actually served a very practical purpose for leadership development.
How so? What was the thinking?
Well, it was about cultivating sensitivity, emotional intelligence, an appreciation for beauty, for culture. Engaging with the arts, it refines your senses. It gives you a vital, creative, and emotional outlet. And it helps a leader connect with, the cultural soul of their people, understand what moves them, what they value.
And I suppose mastering an art form teaches its own kind of discipline, too. Patience, maybe. Attention to detail.
Absolutely. And humility. Doesn't matter if you're a prince. Learning an instrument or a complex dance takes diligent practice. You have to submit to the process.
That's the point.
Plus, many of these ancient art forms were steeped in philosophy or spirituality. They carried deep meaning, so mastering them wasn't just about technique. It was another way to gain wisdom, another path to understanding.
So it all ties together.
It does. It helps ensure that the ideal Kshatriya wasn't just tough or smart, but also a cultured, sensitive person, a complete human being, really, capable of understanding and appreciating all the different facets of life.
Okay, so when we look back at this incredible, multifaceted education warrior, scholar, compassionate ruler, cultured soul, all rolled into one character, what does it mean for us now? Are there timeless lessons here?
Oh, I definitely think so. Regardless of, what we do in life today, one huge takeaway for me is the emphasis on holistic development.
Right, not just focusing on one narrow skill.
Exactly. It was a very conscious effort to nurture everything, mind, body, spirit, aiming for balance across all these domains, physical, intellectual, ethical, artistic. That idea of striving to be a well-rounded person, that's incredibly relevant for just personal growth today.
Yeah, I agree. And that focus on Dharma, too. Righteous conduct, selfless service, that feels really important. It's kind of a call to think beyond just ourselves, isn't it? To consider the impact of what we do and to try and lead with integrity, whether that's, managing a big company or just interacting with people day to day.
Absolutely. And there's also the implicit message that learning never stops. A prince's education didn't end when he took the throne.
Right, it's ongoing.
It had to be. A continuous journey of learning, adapting, growing. And in our world, which changes so fast, that commitment to lifelong learning, maybe that's more vital now than ever before.
It feels like these weren't just, job specs for a prince thousands of years ago. They were really skills for life. Building strong character, learning how to lead effectively, cultivating a compassionate heart.
Yeah, it paints a picture of trying to become the best version of yourself. Not just for your own sake, but for the positive effect you can have on the world around you.
So we've taken quite a journey today, really diving deep into this remarkably complete education of a Kshatriya prince. We've seen the warrior's discipline, the scholar's wisdom, the ruler's compassionate heart, and that cultivated artistic soul.
It's a powerful model, isn't it? And maybe surprising in its breadth looking back from today.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure. Until next time.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If ancient leaders were expected to master not just combat and statecraft, but also compassion, justice, and the arts, what might that suggest about the kind of, completeness we should perhaps be striving for in our leaders and even in ourselves today?